Welcome to another edition of Jazz Smack Postgame, where the Jazz got a good win tonight in Salt Lake against the Minnesota Timberwolves. This win or loss tonight, it was going to help the Jazz draft in the upcoming draft either way. So we're happy. Let's talk about it.
Jazz Smack, your source for information and analysis about the Utah Jazz and NBA basketball. Jazz Smack is a community for passionate Utah Jazz NBA fans.
So tonight, as a result of the Jazz receiving the Minnesota Timberwolves first-round pick in the upcoming draft, getting a win tonight isn't the worst thing in the world. Yes, a loss would have been more helpful for the Jazz, but it was a win-win situation either way. And so I'm not too terribly upset with this win tonight because obviously, the guys played hard. And I think that from a morale standpoint, it's nice to see some wins here and there. And this is a really long homestand for the Jazz. And the Minnesota Timberwolves were greatly depleted. Rudy's not playing. Obviously, something happened with Anthony Edwards where he got too many technicals and he had to sit out this game because of that extra technical foul he received. So it's a much depleted roster, and they also have injury issues. So tonight, actually, I'm not surprised they won this game, even with sitting Lowry. John Collins played really well. Walker played some significant minutes and played well in his minutes. The young guys overall, I thought, played really well as a whole. And so this win, I'm not too terribly upset with it, in all honesty. I'm happy to see the guys play reasonably well once in a while, and I know it's important for the guys on the team. The guys on the team do not want to lose games. No player wants to lose games. So from a fan standpoint, yes, we want the team to lose games for draft position. But from a player's perspective, they don't want to lose games.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess I was not pleased with the outcome when, we have to win some games. We are going to win some games, frankly. And I think the games that we are going to win are the ones that we can't control, where just our young guys play extremely well. And that's going to be the case, particularly in Utah. It's a very difficult place to come into play. We know that. They're going to win some of those games. And I just hate to win the games when I think we can control it. And when we saw Anthony Edwards get a 16 technical foul and miss a game, even though, once Minnesota did their appeal and then lost the appeal, I think you have to sit down, John Collins. Like Collin, I think you have to play because he's been out a while. I think he was chomping at the bit to play. I think you have to play Collins. But honestly, I would have set, Walker didn't play a ton of minutes, but I would not have played them both because I think the thing is we can control our losses. We can't control where Minnesota is going to be. And if they're in the play-in and win, right, we can't control that. The only thing we can control this season is the Jazz record. And so to me, that's the one we have to focus on most and not what Minnesota is going to do. We hope Minnesota is going to drop, right? We both hope that. And I think tonight was helpful in that they're now down to the 9th position, but they're still in the play-in. But we can't control it. Even if they're in the play-in, they probably win the play-in and get in. And so I think we both would have preferred this loss. But there were some good performances tonight. So I think that's the positive that we need to focus on. And boy, it was great to see Collin. I get a thrill just seeing that guy, how hard he plays and how much he's chomping at the bit. And that's how every NBA player should be, that they just love the game and they just want to play.
Yeah, his positive energy is always missing. When he's not playing because his attitude and everything. And you can see him on the bench. He's always cheering. He's up. He's cheering on the guys all the time. I mean, the guy has such positive energy. It's just nice to see him play just from that standpoint alone. And I liked him getting inserted back into the starting lineup. And if he is going to play, I hope that this means that Clarkson's season is essentially done from a significant minutes perspective. I mean, I would rather have Collin playing than Clarkson, in all honesty. And like I've previously said a million times, I don't want Clarkson to play at all. And I think that Justin Zanuck and Danny Ainge need to do something about that. But Collin from an asset perspective, I think we still need to play him this year. If the Jazz do get an offer for him this summer, he needs to be productive down the stretch. And I think, yes, you can sit him some games, but in the games that he does play, I think that he needs to play major minutes so his numbers are up.
I agree. I've said this many times, is that, the person that hurts Collin's trade value more than anybody this year and last year is Will Harding. He does not play him enough. He doesn't realize the asset that he has. And Collin's a guy that can score 24, 25 points a game with great efficiency. And Hardy's not letting him do that. Now, I think you have to be careful the rest of the season because you can't play him too much, or he's gonna, or he could win games for you. But I think Hardy has hurt his trade value, which is not good overall for the team, right? And it's not really good for Collin either. I'm sure you have an ego when you're traded. You want to be traded for a package, right? So. And I want to be traded for a package just for him because I like him, but plus for the Jazz, I want more back. So I would like to see that. It's interesting. Clarkson didn't even suit up. So maybe hopefully that'll be like a week in a row that he doesn't suit up, because that's the way that Hardy can't play him if he doesn't suit up.
Yeah, I think the place to see him is in street clothes on the bench, unless they actually just reach some sort of a buyout agreement with him so he can go join a contender before the playoffs start. And I know that's a significant buyout because he's getting paid significant money. And so buying him out for a whole nother year, I mean, that's a big buyout. But still, I'd rather see that. From the Jazz standpoint, I think that would be the right move, in all honesty. The best thing for the franchise is for him to be elsewhere, and he can go play for a team that's actually playing for something, and that helps the Jazz too. So whatever. I don't think they're going to buy him out, and I think we're going to be, and I don't think he's tradable either, like I've previously said. But anyway, so why don't we take a look at the box score, just to take a look at and see what took place tonight. Mm-hmm. And like we said, John Collins, holy moly. John Collins and Brice. Brice is shooting. He seems to be on a roll again. Like, he's back to shooting the ball. And he's in rhythm again. He's playing bigger minutes. It's nice to see Brice actually have some success. In that first half, I mean, everything was going in. Just everything that he put up, it was going in. And I don't know which broadcast you watched, but I watched the Minnesota broadcast with Jim Peterson. And they remarked multiple times, the guy's on fire. So, I'm happy for Brice. I really am. I think that I'm hoping that Hardy just gives him a few more minutes so that he has an opportunity to get in a rhythm for the rest of the year, rather than just playing him 10 to 12 minutes. I don't think this is helping Brice's development at all. Yes, there's only so many minutes to go out to give to people. You can't play everybody. But I think from the Jazz perspective, playing Brice compared to Svi is a good thing. I think Brice compared to playing Clarkson is a good thing. So that's where I stand on it.
I agree. The interesting thing about Brice, and we don't know yet because we haven't seen him get consistent minute, he really gets in streaks where he cannot hit anything. Like, he misses the basket entirely, or he just goes like screaming hot where he's hitting everything. And the thing is, we don't know yet because he doesn't get the consistent playing time. We don't know if that's just who Brice is, which is, troubling if it is, or if Brice is a guy that just needs some consistency to keep his game up. And Hardy just hasn't given it. Like, he gets the 5 minutes a game, and then he'll get like good time. It's hard to plan, but he looked really, he looked good tonight. He looked really good, and I was happy too, because I want to give him a shot. because I like Brice and I would like to see him a part of the Jazz if he can prove himself. If he can't prove himself, then let's increase his value to the most we can and then move him to somebody else. But it was really nice to see him playing and playing well.
Yeah, and another strange thing with tonight's box score, I mean, Keontae has been getting big minutes, and tonight he got significant minutes, but he didn't play in the 30s tonight. And even without Clarkson playing, he didn't play in the 30s. And that's an interesting choice, because actually I would support this choice, because quite frankly, Keontae had a whole bunch of assists tonight, and he didn't commit any turnovers, which is great, but he was still really bad tonight. I mean, he just played poorly. His defense was horrific, and he shot the ball really poorly. And so, if Brice can actually take some minutes from Keontae, I would actually be in support of that, the remainder of the season as well. That means Keontae plays less, but I think that would also be beneficial. And Keontae may pout, but so be it. I mean, unless he plays really well and plays into those minutes, I don't see any reason why to continue giving him minutes over somebody else.
Yeah, I wonder if he had some sort of ailment tonight that he only got 24 minutes, because when's the last time that Keontae George has only got 24 minutes? I mean, it's shocking. Now, I said this about Keontae, is it that, people that are the big Keontae supporters, and we clearly are not the biggest Keontae guys, but we're rooting for him because he's an asset of the Jazz, is that he gets on these 10-game streaks where he shoots the ball really well. And all the people are like the biggest key, the guys that call him key, they're like, oh, okay, back, he's the guy now. And then he'll go on 10 games where he just really stinks from shooting. And that has been kind of his career so far over the 2 seasons. And he's now on that, where he was hot for 5-6 games in a row. And now it's been a number of games in a row where he's missed everything, except his 3-point shot was pretty good, I think, last game. So it is interesting, but I don't remember. We'd have to go back and look at his last 20 games. I bet there's not a one where he's at 24 minutes. So it's really interesting. I mean, maybe 28 in some, but most of them are 30-ish minutes, even though he's coming off the bench. So it's really interesting that Hardy get him that. Let's see if this is a trend going into the next few games.
Yeah, and the Jazz, I mean, obviously they're trying to spread the minutes around. They have all these other guys playing now. I mean, Cody's with the team and he's playing now. Jaden Springer's playing, and now Collin's back and he's playing. So, I mean, they obviously have a lot of backcourt players that I assume they want to get a decent look at over the last remaining games of the season from an evaluation standpoint. I would assume that's what they're after, because some of these guys are going to be up for extensions in the not too distant future, and you got to be able to see what you have. I mean, that's the bottom line. The Jazz can't be giving out contracts to people that they really don't understand, because they have so many draft picks coming up. If a guy isn't a good fit, you just got to move on from the guy and go on to the next guy.
I agree. With these extensions, what they are right now, you can make one mistake, you can't make 2 mistakes. And so you've really got to see what's there and then not overpay somebody. And honestly, if they're one of those guys that's out there publicly stating, I want the max or whatever it is, and they're not that player, well, move them, because you can't make that mistake. I mean, this is the Brandon Ingram, and he didn't get the max with Toronto. This is the Brandon Ingram, is that New Orleans is look, we don't want to pay the guy. He doesn't play, and he's not a star. Does that mean they didn't like Brandon Ingram? No, they like Brandon Ingram. I think everybody thinks he's a good player, but he's not a great player. So we really have to be careful with these extensions. So I couldn't agree with you more about that. The other thing that's interesting, and you've highlighted this in your last couple of podcasts, we got some guys that, so far our number one option has not shown out, right? I'm not saying it's not on the team, because I don't want to undersell any player in their development. If they bust their butt, because no one thought Curry was going to be either, right? The first couple of seasons, no one thought Curry did. He killed himself during summers, and then he, evolved. So I'm not going to ever say that lock. Oh yeah, none of these guys. I'm not going to say that. But we got some guys that are going to be pieces moving forward. And it's really exciting to see these guys play. 'Cause we got some guys that are like steals that we have, and I don't know where if they're going to be our rotation players, first guys off the bench or starters. I don't know that yet, but we got some. Let's see them develop because it's really exciting to see those guys play, and I'm sure you're going to get into those guys now.
Yeah. So as we said, Brice played really well tonight, and he shot 6 for 10 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 turnovers, but he scored 17 points in 23 minutes of playing time. And in that first half, he was really rolling. And that's what we want to see. And Collin got the start tonight, but he actually didn't play that many minutes. He only played 17 minutes. But in those 17 minutes, he still went 5 for 11 from the field, 2 for 4 on 3, 1 for 1 from the free throw line, 3 assists, and 13 points. So 13 points in 17 minutes at shooting 46% from the field and 50% from the free throw line. I think that's a really good night for Collin's first game back. Even if it is a home game, I think that's a good night for him. And he was obviously thrilled to be back on the court playing basketball. And I'm sure he's not happy with the minutes restriction. But that's what happens when you sit out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. It was. I said this. I just like watching the kid play. I mean, the energy that he brings. I don't think I ever played with a guy like that. And in all my years of playing basketball, I don't know if I've ever seen a guy like him. He is just a bundle of energy, and it's fun to see. I mean, and how you made this comment, how he treats his teammates and how he roots for his teammates. I mean, it's just great to see. John Collins is that way. I just love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, John Collins knocked down Mike Conley in the first quarter. He helps the guy up. I mean, I just honestly. This is a competitive game. I know that, but I like to see that. I like to see the sportsmanship. I don't like the night. That drives me crazy. That's not sportsmanship, right? I just love how some of our guys play the game. And it's going to be sad when they move on from our team.
Yeah. Speaking of John Collins, I mean, that guy, he didn't play major minutes tonight too, because I think that Hardy knew that if he played with Collins and Kessler big minutes, the Jazz were in trouble. So he didn't play those guys big minutes. But John Collins, he plays 27 minutes. It goes 12 for 18 from the field, 3 for 6 on 3, 2 for 3 from the free throw line, 12 rebounds. I mean, the guy was awesome, and he scores 29 points. I mean, you can't say enough good things about John Collins. He tore it up tonight. And yeah, if he hadn't played, if Walker hadn't played, there's no way the Jazz win this game. But when they do play, it's actually really nice to see them play. And maybe John Collins, if he didn't have such a good night, Hardy would have played him more. But since he already had his number, the 29 points, that's a really good number for anybody. And he already got that number. So Jazz were trying to lose. Not necessarily trying to lose, but they weren't trying to obviously win. And so he only played the 27 minutes.
Yeah. What happened to those days of the negative asset contract for John Collins? Yeah. But, the challenge of John Collins, I don't think his contract is guaranteed next year. I think it's a player option. And John Collins may very well not pick that up. Yeah. So I hope we didn't lose this guy for nothing. Ainge, I hope we did not lose this guy for nothing, because he may not pick up that, look, 12, look at that line is incredible. 12 for 18, 3 for 6, 12 rebounds in 1 block in 26 minutes or 27 minutes. I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, his play this year has just been fantastic. So somebody should want to pay this guy. And I hope we still can flip him for something, because I do worry about that. Now, his number's still big. It's, and I think you made this point many times, which I think is accurate. There's still a perception for him that if somebody else trades for him and pays a lot more, that they end up looking foolish because they got him for a lot less, right? I think this happened to Zach LaVine too, that he's one of the top 10 offensive players in the league this year. If you look at his stats, but I don't think his trade value was that high this year because everybody could have got him for nothing and made Chicago pay you to take him the last couple of years, and no one did it. So, so maybe it'll go in our favor. But man, he had a fantastic game.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I haven't looked through the league and seen what every team's salary cap issues are right now, but I'm sure that John Collins and his agent are going to look at that at the season's close, and they're going to evaluate whether they pick it up or not based on who has cap room. Because yes, I think if John Collins goes on the market, he's going to get offers. It's just the question of how much can people offer, because there's a whole bunch of teams with cap issues right now, and with the new salary structure and the first and second aprons, and I mean it's a lot more complicated now, and there's significant penalties now, so a lot of it depends on that. But I firmly believe that I think that he will decline it if there's a team out there that or a couple of teams out there that he thinks, preferably two, so they can be bidding against each other. Yeah, I honestly, I think there's a really good chance that he declines it.
Yeah, actually, a really good point on the salary, though, is that we need to dig into that more so we can talk more affirmative about it. But what I've heard on other people that I respect, there's not a lot of teams with salary cap space next year. Yeah. So it is going to be really hard for a team to move unless they do like a sign and trade or something like that. So you're right. So Ainge knows these things cold, right? So that may have been one of the factors for Ainge saying, like, look, he's not going to decline that because it's really hard for him to go get the contract. He may say he wants to be traded or something like that. And honestly, I don't think John Collins would ever do that. But it is going to be hard for him to go get his market value in a free agent. I do think that's the case, but we should look into that more.
Yeah. Another thing I was actually thinking about before we get to the rest of the box score, the Jazz, I mean, if the Jazz get lucky in this year's draft and actually get the guy they want, a really impactful player, if they were to get a Cooper Flag, the Jazz might not try to lose next year. Yeah. I mean, it's actually possible that they try and turn this thing around more quickly than that. I mean, the Jazz have a lot of guys. I mean, we both like Collier, Filipowski. I mean, so it's not like the cupboard's empty. It's turning out that it's the Jazz, if they weren't trying to throw games, they'd be winning some of these games, and they'd actually have a decent record. So if they get lucky in the lottery, this might be actually a 1 year serious tank. I mean, they obviously screwed up and they didn't do it the previous 2 years, but this might be a 1 year deal where they just try and lose basically all their games.
Yeah, I've thought of exactly the same thing. You know, the challenge is I don't think Ainge wants to give away any picks, so I think he really probably is annoyed with the terrible Oklahoma City Favors trade, right? And now it's top 8 protected next year. So that's going to be the only thing that's like hanging over, you know, where he's like, man, I don't want to lose that pick. But, you know, you're dead on right. You have Collin Sexton, you have Collins, you have Markkanen, you have Walker Kessler that's now a starting level player. You have Collier that's now going to be a second year player. I mean, you got some guys there. You add a young stud to that's not going to be the number one option next year, but you add a young stud to that, and maybe you get lucky with the Minnesota pick too, and you get 2 of those guys in this draft. They may go for it. I mean, I've been thinking the same thing. They may go for it like immediately, because that would not shock me with like a Danny Ainge, where he says like, look, I now have the assets. I'm going to turn it around. So let's see. I mean, it'll be interesting. You know, obviously the Jazz have never had the number 1 pick. They never won the lottery. And so eventually our luck has got to change. Let's hope this is the year that it changes. But that's always the issue, is that, you know, the ball has always gone against us. And yeah, you almost think like they're rooting it, you know, they're setting it up the Jazz can't win. I don't think that's the case, but it is interesting. We've never had the number 1 pick.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we've talked about previously, the percentages for any team to get that, it doesn't matter how bad you are, you still only have a 14% chance of getting that top pick, any team. So that's your best chance is only a 14% chance. So The likelihood, yeah, so it's essentially a 1 in 7 chance of getting that top pick. That's not great odds. So I don't expect the Jazz to get the top pick, even if they lose with one of the 3 worst records, because it's a 1 in 7 chance. So with a 1 in 7 chance, you're not expecting them to actually get the top pick.
Right. Except eventually, if you're playing your odds, you are going to have to win a lottery, right? I agree with you. I'm not disputing the math. But like over 40 years, there's got to be a time that you actually do get the number 1 pick, right? I mean, eventually you've got to win, even though you look out on a season by season basis. And eventually we do have to win. Let's hope it's this season. But honestly, I'm very bullish on Ace Bailey. I am very bullish on Ace Bailey. So, yeah, I think Cooper Flagg, because he plays both sides of he plays both offense and defense. He's a guy you couldn't pass up on. But like, if you ended up getting like the 3 pick with Ace Bailey, I don't think that's a bad, I don't think it's a bad outcome either. Yeah.
And speaking of that, I mean, obviously the NCAA tournament is coming up, and I'm going to definitely try and watch Cooper Flagg in the NCAA tournament, playing for Duke. Now, watching all these prospects like Ace Bailey, I mean, that team just isn't good. So unfortunately, they're probably not going to be in the NCAA tournament. I don't even know what their current record is right now, but I know that they were struggling, and that's unfortunate, because it'd be nice to be able to actually see these guys play in meaningful games, even if they've had 1 year of college at this point. They're in their, in the final stages of it. So you can say they're really not a freshman anymore. So it'd be really nice to be able to see those guys play in the NCAA tournament. But, I mean, Ace Bailey's teams and Dylan Harper's team, that team stinks. Oh, it's unfortunate. But we do get to see Cooper Flagg for sure, obviously.
Yeah, as long as, but they could, Rutgers 14 and 15. And this is my point, point I made about both of those guys.
Yeah.
14 and 15.
Yeah.
Well, that could be a 64 seed. Yeah.
Unless they win the conference tournament, they're not going. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go to some of our young guys.
Okay. Let's shift to Isaiah Collier. Isaiah had a really good night tonight again. 14 assists. He committed to a few turnovers, but the 14 assists, I mean, that's a massive number. That's a massive number for anybody. I mean, Stockton's best years in terms of assist averages, he was around 14 and a half for a season, and that's obviously a season that's basically unheard of. But a 14 assist night is a really big night for a rookie, especially. Really good to see. I mean, he committed some turnovers, but still, I'll bypass that. I mean, 6 turnovers. Yeah, it's not a good number, but the 14 assists eclipses that so much that I'm happy. And he also shot 50% from the field, even though he didn't make any of his 3-pointers over 2 tonight. But 3 for 4 from the foul line, so 11 points, 14 assists, another double for the rookie point guard. Another really good step forward for him.
Yeah, I think it really helped Keontae's assists and Collier's assist to have some guys that actually can make a shot. Playing like a John Collins, a Collin Sexton, etc. So I think it did help. But what I was worried about with Collier, not worried, I rephrase that. I wasn't worried with this. I think NBA scouts, which are really good, and there's a ton of them, I think that they, for the last couple of games, have changed the scouting on Collier, and it affected his assists. I'm guessing that. I'm not sure of that. That's just a hypothesis. And so it was really good to see him break out of that, if that's true, and get the 14 assists, because they went down the last few games. And, the NBA is going to do that. You've got to adjust. I think they are going to adjust off of Collier and make him shoot the ball. And that's going to be like the Achilles heel until he fixes that. But 14 assists is great, even with the turnovers. So it another impressive game. And I think it was great because it was after 2 games of kind of underwhelming, assist numbers.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the Jazz as a team tonight really had a huge game with assists. I mean, they made 47 field goals and 35 of them were assisted. The downside is the 20 turnovers, but so be it. It's a young team. In addition to that, Kyle got off to a bit of a rough start tonight. But, I mean, 13 rebounds and 11 points, another double-double for him as well, a couple of assists, and he turned the ball over a lot too. But I thought overall, I mean, I thought he's really good again. I just can't say enough good things about him. He's just stepping into a rhythm, a good rhythm, where he's getting significant minutes again. This is like one of those things that I was complaining about earlier. He just wasn't receiving enough minutes. But I expect him to continue to produce if he's given minutes, because he seems to be very confident out on the floor. I mean, he can almost do anything on the offensive end. The defense is still a struggle at times with physicality and things like that, which, I mean, Walker had some of those struggles too. Everybody's going to go through that. But overall, I mean, really positive for him again as well. I mean, just in the 22 and a half minutes of play to score 11 points and get 13 rebounds and 2 assists. I mean, awesome numbers.
Yeah, 5 offensive rebounds. So he's doing he's doing what Walker Kessler does. I mean, yeah, he had the second worst plus minus, and I'm not going to mention who had the worst plus minus, but we can always guess that because it's always usually the same guy that has it. But this is like, the plus minus looking at a one game versus like over a time is you can't really do that. But he looks really good. I mean, I still baffled when I listened a week ago to another podcast and they were saying, oh, if you're going to do a redraft, I don't know if Kyle Filipowski would go higher. And you're just like, what is this guy talking about? I mean, you're representing yourself as a draft expert, and you don't think that he would go higher in a redraft based upon how he's performed this year? I mean, oh yeah, he's an early second round pick. No, I mean, this guy is showing that he's an NBA player. And the hope is, just like Taylor Hendricks, remember how Taylor Hendricks looked versus what he looks now. I mean, he is massive now. I hope that Kyle does that over the summer, like builds up his upper body and his lower, because, and Cody obviously too, because that'll help him immensely. That's what he's doing, is people are pounding him around. That happens with rookies. These are kids are 19 years old. Well, he's like 20 now, but they're very young. They haven't filled out yet. They've just got to hit the weight room. So he's looking really good. Now, go on to your next one, to Cody. He's kind of up and down.
Yeah, well, I mean, I obviously I don't think he was the worst player on the court tonight. And he did make 3 of 4 3-pointers. Mm-hmm. But overall, it wasn't a great game from him. It was mediocre at best. And he's still struggling with certain aspects of it, especially the physicality. He's struggling with the strength issue like he always has this entire year. Because, again, I mean, if you look at his box score, he went 3 for 7 from the field, 3 for 4 on threes, not a single rebound, and 1 assist and 1 turnover. And the no rebounds, we've talked about this before with him, the no rebounds is, I mean, that's troubling, because it's not like Cody's a 6-foot-tall player. I mean, he measured out at 6'6". He measured out at basically exactly the same height as Gordon Hayward did when he came out. So that's not an undersized guy from a height standpoint, but his strength is just not there right now. And that's what he has to change in the offseason.
Yeah. The only thing that just really troubles me about his box score is the rebounds. To me, that's inexcusable. You, notwithstanding your strength, you got to bust your butt, get in there, and pull down some rebounds. I mean, your friend that's in the G League, that's how he's in the G League. Okay, that guy's stronger, right? And but we need Cody to get some rebound. He's big enough. There's no excuse. He's got to get some rebound. So his shooting looked better. That was great. I think he's showing flashes, but I hate to see these games where it's no rebounds. That just, like, if there's one thing that really annoys me, it's that. And honestly, I've harped on Markkanen for that this year. Okay, you're not shooting the ball well. Those things happen, particularly if your back's been bothering you, but get some rebounds, right? Get in there, hustle, put your body against somebody, take an elbow. You're getting paid a lot to take elbows and cheap shots, et cetera, and get some rebounds. So that bothers me about his box score. But his shooting looks better. He hit some 3-point shots, and that was great to see.
Yeah, in defense of Cody tonight, I mean, the Jazz crushed Minnesota on the boards too. So obviously, him not getting rebounds didn't lead to a bunch of rebounds for Minnesota because the Jazz just dominated on the boards tonight. So, but still, I mean, no rebounds in 18 minutes of play for somebody of his height. You just can't have that. It's inexcusable in all honesty. So the last player that I'm going to talk about tonight, what do you think about KJ Martin to this point? He's basically just making a bunch of dunks for the most part, an occasional corner three, but he seems to be playing really well. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Jazz didn't get back on a fast break for Minnesota in the first half, and he was really upset with his teammates for not getting back on defense. And the Jazz so desperately need that. They need somebody who will lead on the defensive end. And obviously Walker is that guy overall, but Walker's not a big guy to tell his teammates, play harder. And KJ Martin did that, and he's barely been on the team, a couple of weeks. So I was thrilled to actually see that because he was obviously very frustrated with his teammates because the guy missed the shot after he got back, and then there was nobody there to get that defensive rebound. And Minnesota got the rebound, and they made the score, and that's what really ticked him off.
Yeah, and I don't recall if he blocked that shot or he just changed a shot that the guy missed it.
I think he changed it
because of KJ Martin. So KJ Martin hustled back.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I would be a little concerned about that that he did, which was hilarious, but is you don't want to rub your teammates the wrong way, right? You got to be a little careful how you do things, but we absolutely need that. I honestly think he's a keeper, but the challenge is you and I have felt some of these other guys are a keeper too. And then we bring them in and we shift them out, and some of them haven't stuck in the league. And I don't know if that's because they're players that shouldn't be in the league, but I think that so many of these teams are kind of like, just, okay, you weren't a top draft pick or you had your chance, now I'm going to move on to somebody else, that they're out. So I would like KJ to hang on. I would like him to be there next season and see what he turns into, because he has some really good flashes. Some really good flashes, and maybe we got him for nothing, right? So maybe, and he's not old. It's not like we're picking up a guy like Svi that can play but is older. I mean, he's 24. KJ Martin's 24, I think.
Just a second. Yep, 24. Yeah, that's a young guy.
Oh.
Young guy.
Yeah. So.
I think both. Obviously, I mean, Ainge realizes that the Jazz have to change the defensive culture, and KJ Martin and Jaden Springer are both defensive guys, and so that may be part of the reason why they're actually on the roster at this point, because the Jazz have to they have to improve on the defensive end. They just have to. They have one of the best defensive players in the league in Walker, yet they are still brutally bad. And yes, some of this is the offense that they run and the shot selection that they run, because they have terrible floor balance on offense, and that leads to struggles on defense as well. But still, they have to get better on the defensive end. And so they need to find some two-way players. And if KJ Martin and Springer and whoever else can fill that, I think that's a positive for the team as a whole.
Yeah, I'm going to make another hypothesis that you're not going to be able to prove or disprove. We're just going to see over time. I don't think whatever players we have on the Jazz, we're going to be a good defensive team, because I think the defense starts with the head coach and the mentality that the head coach said. And so far, Hardy 2 years in a row we're the worst defensive team in the league. That's unacceptable to me. So I don't think it's going to change. I completely agree with you with regard to KJ Martin. I want him. I like his attitude. I think he is going to hustle on defense. I think we need those type of players. I don't think it's going to change our defensive ranking materially, because I think that starts at the top, and Hardy's got to decide that defense is important as offense, or Ainge and Zanuck need to tell him that. Like, for our team, defense is important as offense.
Yeah. I mean, is Pat Riley's team ever going to be the worst team in the NBA on defense? Of course not. Would Jerry Sloan's teams ever be the worst team in the NBA? No, they wouldn't. They just wouldn't allow it. It would just be unacceptable. You couldn't even imagine that would be the case. And so, yes, we obviously, I mean, this is a trend. This is Hardy's third year, and the Jazz are still awful on defense. So, I mean, we have a good representative sample of, I think, what we're going to see moving forward, unless Ainge and Zanuck step in and say, okay, this isn't right. I mean, the Jazz have all these coaches. It doesn't seem to be helping.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. And Alex Jensen, the guy we both liked, that's good with developing centers. I mean, Hardy pushed him out, after one season. I don't look, if the chemistry's not right, I do think you have to make changes, because you want a cohesive coaching staff that works well together. We have no idea what happened in the background. The only thing that we can react to is right now the defense is not good. Last year the defense was not good, and we all want to make it better, because championship teams are great defensive teams. Golden State got all of this credit for its offense with Steph Curry and his three-pointers. What they were in those seasons were either, like 1 through 5 in best defensive teams in the league. That was like the core of how they won, was that and that attitude. And we need that. Now, we're far away from winning. It just has always irked me that we're not more of an emphasis, because I want our young guys to know defense is important, and I don't want them to play if they don't pick that up. And I want them to get that message, because to me, that's, I want a really tough defensive team. I want the KJ Martins. I want people that knock somebody down, and we just haven't had that. So let's see. I mean, I agree everything you're saying. I just don't think it's going to change the Jazz mentality, because I think the defense starts with Will Hardy.
Yeah, I think we've seen enough that there's all sorts of evidence that it's not going to change as long as the current coach is in place. And it's unfortunate, but I've seen enough now that I don't see us ever. I think it's essentially impossible that the Jazz become one of the most dominant defensive teams, regardless of who they have, just because, he's just not that defensive coach. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk very briefly with the Tankathon?
Okay. So here it is with the current standings. And so the Jazz have 44 losses and 15 wins, and they're in third position right now. Charlotte has 14 wins and 44 losses, and New Orleans has 16 wins and 44 losses. So the Jazz are tied with two other teams with 44 losses, and Washington is obviously the worst still, and they're going to finish with the worst record, and with 48 losses right now against 10 wins. But the team that the Jazz really needs to watch out for is that New Orleans team. New Orleans is obviously in the tank, and it's troubling. And each and every win is very worrisome right now, because we're teetering on the edge of really being in trouble when it comes to ping pong balls.
Yeah, we want to stay in the bottom three, and I looked this up before we started. So Charlotte's next game at home is against Washington. So, and that's tomorrow. So we may, Charlotte should win that game. Let's watch it closely. Charlotte should win that game. But, look, you can tell from this, Charlotte last 10, 2-8. They are not trying to win right now.
Yeah.
They get it. They get it better than Will Hardy gets it. And so we really need to watch it. But they should win this game against Washington. But after that, their next 5 games is home against Golden State. Golden State's playing great. Home against Minnesota. Ant will be back by then, although Minnesota has been really struggling because, Gobert and Randle have not been playing. And then home against Cleveland. Cleveland knocked off Boston tonight. They're playing fantastic. And then home against Brooklyn, they have a chance of winning that game too. But of their next 5, I think at best they win 2 of those. So we really, really need to watch these wins. Hardy, please do not, play our young guys. Let's let them hustle. Let's let them develop. But please do not win these games. We want to get our best odds. And this is the year we're going to get lucky.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, if you look at this also, I mean, Philadelphia is 5 wins better than the Jazz right now, but they've lost 9 games in a row, and Embiid is out for the year.
Yeah.
I mean, how many more games is Philadelphia going to win? Very few.
None.
I mean,
even
it's conceivable that they basically lose every single rest of all the rest of their games. So the Jazz, I mean, there are a bunch of teams that are in front of the Jazz right now that have no incentive to win games. And that's also worrisome. So the Jazz are not the only team in this quest to lose games. And that's the problem. Oh, yeah. Anyway.
Philadelphia's going to try to lose every game. We really need. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. Notwithstanding that I saw like a different top 100 player, and somehow Tyrese Maxey made it in as like the 20th player. I mean, these rankings that these people do are so biased towards the big teams. I mean, it's shocking. How these players look at his stat line this year, and I'm sorry, it's not true. And they're going to lose every game with Maxey and George playing. So that's not your top 20 player. But anyhow, that's a whole other aside.
Well, anyway, I think we're going to call it quits for tonight. Anything else? We're good.
No.
Okay. Well, we're going to call it quits for tonight. And please like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on X. And we will talk to everybody very soon after the next Jazz game, if not before that. So please stay tuned, and we will talk to everybody later. Good night.